Well, like a lot of people, the masters, the greats that I really respected were Tom Savini and, of course, Dick Smith, who I think I had a couple books where they demonstrated techniques, and I just always wanted to do, makeup and effects to shock people. And this was my one big opportunity to do it.
It's not trying to be anything other than it is, which is like, hey, it's Saturday night, let's have a few laughs and make some, popcorn and some sodas. And I'm proud of it, definitely proud of it, that's for sure.
I remember Robert Scott contacted me on the phone, and he had a movie and he needed a special effects artist. So I met him uh, briefly, and I brought a sample of what I had done. And I remember it was funny when I took my hand out of my pocket to shake his hand. Sawdust from my job as a carpenter fell onto the table as I brushed it off. It was, didn't seem to faze Robert. Um, and he pretty much hired me on the spot to do it. Because of the time restraint, I decided to go with the traditional way to do special effects prosthetic appliances at the time was to use plaster molds and foam latex rubber. But because of the time restraints of the movie, I mean, we were shooting in a couple weeks, I decided to go with fiberglass molds and polyurethane foam, which at the time I don't know if a lot of guys were using it for facial appliances, but because of the time, I just had to go with something much more quicker and something I could whip out overnight almost and paint it up. The limitations, unfortunately, the polyurethane foam has a lot less elasticity, didn't stretch as much, and actually tore. So there was a lot of limitations because of the materials I used. But again, I was able to create the 6 zombies in 2 weeks.
We got to work down in Dale's basement, and we're making fiberglass molds and running cold foam and, really kind of sophisticated stuff for the time. And Dale's was sculpting all. I got to sculpt one of the zombies, the half creeper. And so I learned a lot just about technically fabrication and, also the art, the technique of art and sculpting as well. So Dale was always very generous with his time, his money, and his couch occasionally, and blankets. And like I said, $10 if I needed it occasionally, because, there wasn't a lot of money on the show. Obviously, Robert, every penny went into the show, and Robert made sure of that. And it shows up on screen, too. Because you couldn't have it any other way. And that was one of those shows, you did it because you wanted to do it.
When I met the actors, the first thing I did was take casts of their teeth and then sculpted dental appliances, zombie teeth. And like one of the main characters, Jack, his appliance actually came outside of his cheek and was attached to his teeth, so it worked with it. And then from there, I took a cast of the actor with the dental appliances in, so the plaster mold had the teeth on them, and then I sculpted the appliance to match those teeth and actually glued them to the teeth, so it had sort of a skull effect on one side. Actually, the hardest effects to do in the movie were probably things that revolved around the television, where we had a raised set with like a hole in it so the actors and I could get up in there. And some of them were more simple, like the TV coming off the table. I just lifted it off the table and lowered it back down onto myself.
There were some times working with Jack, and when he comes up out of the television set, and I might have mentioned this before somewhere, but there's about that favorite scene where his head's coming out of the, you know, the dry ice fog, and it's coming up and down. And as we all know that there's no air in the dry ice, right? And so we're having him hold down there, right? And he's, you know, so when he comes up and he looks around and he disappears down again, and he's breathing all the dry ice, and he's like, I'm like, what the hell can't just happen? They're like, he just passed out. So he fell down under the set, and he passed out for a second. We revived him. But that was a lesson to be learned that day.
The chainsaw effects were kind of a challenge because we used a real chainsaw that was actually my father's chainsaw that I didn't tell him I was using. We had, you know, blood gags using people who, you know, never used a chainsaw before. To kind of make it more safe, I took the chain off the chainsaw and actually used the fan belt out of a car. So if you look close, you can see, like, when the bride's running around, there's not a sharp chainsaw blade on the chainsaw.
Be off or you'll wind up like all these others!
We went up to Marin for the zombie bloodbath nightmare shoot. So we were just up there for the location. Most of the stuff you see on the hills and stuff like that was shot behind the house. That was our main house. So no, just we'd pile everything in the back of Dale's truck with the camper on it, all the makeup, all the props, all the stuff, whatever he had around the house, the chainsaw, you know, his dad's chainsaw, you know, whatever we could rustle up and stuff, and we'd pack it up there and set up a table and, you know, start applying the makeup and stuff.
I don't really remember why, but the big finale, well, there is the bladder effects on Ironhead, and then that, where the zombies attack him and kind of rip his appliance off. There's a great outtake someplace of that with everybody laughing afterwards. But I remember the blood. I didn't have enough blood, so I had to water it down, and the blood hitting the ground was kind of watery, and you just see the head and the iron hit the ground as it pans across. One of the most interesting moments of the video Dead was when we did the neck cast of Jennifer, who, for when she gets her throat slit. At the time, I was using a dental alginate, which had a very rapid set time. So to slow it down, I would use ice water, where I would literally have ice in the water and then take the ice cubes out right before we mixed it up. So it was like putting ice cream on it. And with Jennifer, I had taped a towel across her. She was pretty much topless except for the towel because I needed the full shoulders as far down as I could get. And as we applied the alginate, it pushed off the towel, and this ice cold material was running down her front as I was scooping it up off her, and she started laughing hysterically, and she kept trying to tell her to stay calm. And half the time I was expecting her to slap me and run out of the room, but she was a great trooper and stuck with it. That was one of the strangest moments I've ever had in my life, was this strange woman I just met, 5 minutes before, and now I'm scooping ice cold alginate off her chest. Thank you.
When I went to the video store and I saw the Video Dead on the shelf, I was like, I finally worked on a movie and it's in the video store. Well, there was hardly any video stores anyway in those days, and there it was, and it was like the coolest thing. And I was like, Robert did it. He really did it. He pulled it off. And there were so many gaps in between filming because, when he could get everyone together, when he could get all the talent and the makeup people and stuff. And you know how people are when they're not exactly, having money given to them in their hands. It's hard to get everyone to show up at a certain time, even on the best of days. And, Robert took that in stride and yet overcame it. I don't know, I guess there was just no giving up. I can't know how to explain it, other than he just bullied it into submission. He just punched and hit that film until it was done, and he put it in a can, and that was that.
Considering the time restraints and the limited money and budget, looking back, I'm actually really, really proud of all that we did and accomplished in such a limited time. 25 years later, I'm actually looking back and being really, proud of what we accomplished. It was, with Robert's direction and guidance, we really pulled off a lot on weekends and, having very little experience. It was quite the adventure. Was another elaborate set with dry ice and a false floor with lighting gags
And I was
inside.
the head, and I was
Patrick.
the hand.
Oh my God.
Sorry to interrupt.
I know you're not sorry.